you, Vice President Joe Biden suggesting that the Taliban is not our enemy. Is not our enemy. What's going on with the leadership in this country? Joining me now, American Center for Security Policy founder Frank Gaffney. Frank, let me read this. Our audience needs to hear this. This is Biden in Biden's words. Quote, "The Taliban per se is not our enemy. There's not a single statement that the president has ever made in any of our policy assertions that the Taliban is our enemy because it threatens U.S. interests." Frank, I was there. I watched the planes fly into the World Trade Center. I watched 3,000 people die. 16 of my very close friends died in that. We know for a fact Al-Qaeda and the Taliban were behind that attack, and they've been behind our war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Am I missing this, Frank?
I think you've got it right. As far as it goes, I think truthfully what we're dealing with, and the Vice President, and for that matter the Obama administration more generally, refuse to acknowledge is that what we're dealing with here is not just one faction or another, the Al-Qaeda here or there, or the Taliban in Afghanistan. We're dealing with a community of people, not all Muslims, but a community of people that embrace a doctrine they call Sharia. And as you and I have talked about in the past, Eric, if they embrace that doctrine, they are obliged to engage in jihad against the infidels, those like us who do not subscribe to their program. And to the extent you fail to appreciate that, no matter how you dress it up, obviously in this case, I think the Vice President is trying to set the predicate for how we're going to declare victory and walk away from Afghanistan by pretending the Taliban isn't a problem. But no matter how you dress it up, you're going to leave in place, not only there, but I'm afraid elsewhere in the world, people who think of themselves as our enemies and who are acting on that proposition in ways that will become increasingly dangerous for all of us.
Yes, sir. Let me read that statement, piece of that statement again. There's not a single statement that the president has ever made in any of our policy assertions that the Taliban is our enemy. You know what? He may be right. Vice President Joe, we called it Gaff-tastic Joe, but he may actually be right. Maybe the president hasn't declared the Taliban our enemy, and that may be part of the problem.
Well, it's part of the problem, but what I'm suggesting is the vastly problem is we're not recognizing that the Muslim Brotherhood is our enemy. We're not recognizing that Jamaat Islamiyah is our enemy, that Hamas and Hezbollah, that Iran. Do you know that there's a federal judge in the Southern District of New York who has just determined that Iran actually collaborated with Al-Qaeda on those 9/11 attacks, killing your friends and so many others? We're ignoring that reality, and I'm simply saying to you, this is beyond naivete. At the very best, this kind of willful blindness, Eric, is reckless, and I think probably it actually is a wrecking operation. And the result of this wrecking operation is going to be at the very moment that we're now watching our military eviscerated by the budget cuts that this president is supporting. We're also seeing an enemy being increasingly emboldened in Afghanistan, notably the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda elements, maybe not in the tribal areas, but elsewhere around the world, and all of these other groups, by the perception that we are in fact willing to submit to their supremacy, which is what Sharia commands them to effect.
Absolutely. Honestly, Frank, this is the whole administration has been apologetic to the Muslim world, to the Sharia believers, the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda, and so forth. Frank, we're going to leave it there. Appreciate your time, though, tonight.
Nice to talk with you, Eric.